we are going to attempt a 10K day today, with caveats. Now, someone got a new dragon last night. Someone has already busted the squeaker and said dragon. I don't know who I'm talking about. Do you, Ogre? Do you know who I'm talking about? Do you know who busted his dragon squeaker already? Do you like your dragon? You like your dragon? I think he likes his dragon. DeHubs and I took bets on how long it would be before the squeaker broke. We both bet by the end of the night. We were right. Now it just puffs out air instead of squeaking. Oh well. Don't mind the mess behind me. It's cleaner than it was a few minutes ago. But we are going to attempt a 10K day today. With caveats. I am secretly, not so secretly, going to be participating in the 100 times 100 challenge. I saw this in one of the Discord groups I'm in, where the idea is to write 100 words a day, every day for 100 days. So it goes from March 1st till I think June, sometime between June 8th and June 10th. I can't remember. I'll put it on the screen. Anyways, the point is to write 100 words every day so that at the end of the 100 days, you have 10,000 words. Now, I am not officially participating in this. They have a spreadsheet. They have a sign-up sheet. I am not doing all that because I don't want to disappoint myself if I do not successfully do this, especially since I usually only write Tuesday through Saturday anyways. So I am not officially participating. I'm just using this idea to kickstart my own writing. And what I mean by that is I'm the kind of person that if I sit down and make time to write even just 100 words, I am probably going to write a lot more than 100 words. Okay? And then what my plan is today is to attempt to do a 10K day. I am not going online to do any of this. This is all going to be like just on the vlogs. No live streams, no nothing like that. I don't even know if I'm really going to set timers. I probably will, but I don't know yet. So we shall see. Like I said, the way I usually do writing sprints is if I sit down, and I'm going to sit down long enough to write 100 words, I'm probably going to get a lot more than 100 words. However, I haven't been doing a lot of writing lately. You guys have seen that from my previous vlogs. I've done like weeks where I haven't gone days without doing any writing at all, or when I have written like a whole bunch of words just to delete them the next day because I haven't been happy with the way it's going. So, all that being said, that I'm pretty certain the way this is going to work for me with the 100 times 100 is that I will sit down and I'll write way more than 100 words every time I sit down to write. But on days I don't normally write, which are like Sundays and Mondays, I will sit down, I'll get my 100 words, and I'll be happy that I got 100 words, and I will be done. So, yay. That's what we're going to attempt for the next 100 days, starting today. And on top of that, today we're also doing a 10K day, so we're going to get a lot more than 100 words. I have been struggling with the Sultry Solstices series, and this is the first of 7 series in the Serenity universe. I am currently on story number 3. These are all short stories. There's going to be 49 total when all the 7 series are done, and they're all going to be short stories. I've got themes picked out for all the stories, and I'll do a little video clip later where we go into more detail about what I have for each series so far, because that is going to be a big part of what we're doing today. But suffice it to say that I've been struggling with the first series, and I am currently on story number 3. I am on draft 3 of story number 3, and so far, knock on wood, I don't have any wood near me. Oh yeah, I do. So far, it's going good. It remains to be seen if it will stay going good, because I have gotten about the 6,000 word mark on the past 2 drafts and started all over again with a brand new draft, which is about the halfway mark for these stories, because these stories are roughly between 10 and 15,000 words long. I think the first one is sitting at like a little over 13,000. The second one currently, which is in draft, I don't even remember anymore, is sitting at a little over 12,000. But I have to rewrite the epilogue of the second one if I keep the current idea of the third one. So that will change probably. Basically what it comes down to is I think moving forward, I need to wait to write the epilogue of the previous story until after the next story is written. So like when I complete the third story, I'll write the epilogue for story number 2 so that they match. And I will not write the epilogue for story 3 until after I finish story 4. That kind of thing. I think that's what I need to go going forward. Serenity Universe has 49 stories, 7 series of 7 stories each. And what I'm doing today is, since I am stuck on that story and I'm struggling with it so much, but I have been getting ideas for other stories and other series in the same universe, I want to use today's 10K day to cultivate that. And I want to write 10,000 words across all the stories in the series. Again, with caveats. Because what I want to do is I want to mostly brainstorm, write if I can, but mostly brainstorm ideas for different stories in the series. I don't want to constrict myself to just working on the Sultry Solstices series. So what I'm going to do today is I'm going to allow myself to jump around the different series in the universe and work on whatever story I feel like when I feel like it, as long as in the end of today I have 10,000 words. All those words might be in one story, they might be split across all the stories, I don't know yet. It will be a mixture of drafting words and it will be a mixture of brainstorming words. It'll be mostly probably brainstorming words because I think the best way to attack this right now is to let my brain go where it wants to go as it wants to go there. So as I work on each story idea that I want to work on, I will describe the series it's a part of a little bit, unless it's all part of the same series. And I'm going to go make myself some breakfast real quick. And after I get done eating breakfast, I will come back and talk about the first series, which is the Sultry Solstices series, and all the series as a whole, like where we stand and how they came to be concept-wise. Because I think I've talked about it a little bit, but not a lot. So we're going to go into a deep dive today as we're doing this writing experiment. And we are going to talk more in depth about each of the smaller series in the Serenity universe, how they came to be and stuff like that, like origins. And yeah, because the origins of this universe are a little wonky at best, basically. So yeah, let's go ahead and I'm going to go make some breakfast and I'll come back with you guys and chat with you some more about how this is going to go and what we're doing and get some writing done. Before I got started with my day, I made myself a little bit of breakfast. Originally, I was trying to make an omelet with rotisserie chicken and smoked Gouda cheese, but I ended up ripping it when I was trying to flip it, so it turned more into scrambled eggs with omelet pieces. And then I also had an apple butter covered bagel. I usually eat plain bagels, and then I just added some apple butter to it. It was quite delicious in the long run. And paired with that, I had a cup of cocoa cappuccino mix. It's quite delicious. And while eating breakfast, I decided to watch some more of the anime I've been watching lately. I've been watching Kamasami Kiss lately, and I had 2 episodes left. And while I was eating breakfast, I decided to go ahead. Usually I just watch one while I'm eating in the morning, but I decided to go ahead and watch both episodes since they were the last 2 that Netflix has to offer. Breakfast has been had. I finished my coffee cocoa drink. And now we're going to start the first sprint. I am growing trees with Stephanie and we're going to do some writing. So the first thing I want to do is actually read back over what I have for all of the stories. Not like read through them, but like read through like my plot ideas and see what I have. So that's the first thing I want to do. And then we will go from there. I have a Pepsi, and later today I will drink a Monster, but for now we're going to start with this and we'll see how it goes. So let's do this. So the Serenity universe actually started as a single story that was in an anthology. Presumed Dead is now currently the first story in the Serenity universe and the first story in Sultry Solstices, which is the first series in the Serenity universe. But before all that happened, it was a piece in an anthology, and it was supposed to be about 8,000 words. It was on a limited run, and I have since gotten the rights back to it, and I have now edited it and added some chapters and an epilogue, and it has become part of a larger universe. But those are its origins. When I was writing said story, I had enough people ask me to explore the world some more that I came up with the idea of using the idea of the seventh son of the seventh son, but changing them to be daughters. So there's the 7 daughters of a 7th daughter, and how they find love with different supernatural creatures. Around the same time I got my rights back for Presumed Dead, I was invited to join another anthology where the idea was to write about monsters and romance. And I decided to write about the monster under the bed. I had recently read a short story that I fell in love with based on a Tumblr post where the monster assigned to a child didn't scare the child because the child was being abused, and instead attacked the person who was abusing said child. And I was like, what happens if the child grows up? What happens with the monster if the child grows up? So I used that idea, and I decided to write a story for said anthology. Again, it was on a limited run. I have since gotten my rights back, but this one became the origins for the first story in the second series, Monstrous Mates. The timeline on all these short stories is very weird as far as like when they joined different series. But suffice it to say that Monstrous Mates had 3 different times when stories were added to it, whereas Sultry Solstices had only 1 time when different stories were added to it. I knew right from the get-go when I decided to turn Presumed Dead into the first in a series that there were going to be 7 in that series. However, when I was coming up with the idea of Monstrous Mates, I didn't have the idea for the Serenity universe yet. I just knew that I wanted it to be part of a series, and I wanted to write stories about the different monsters that I had mentioned in the first story and how they find romance. And eventually later it did become part of the Serenity universe, which means it would also have 7 stories. But that happened at different increments at different times. The first time was when I decided to write the stories of the other 2 monsters mentioned in the very first story, making that originally a trilogy. Then a while later, I came up with the idea for 2 more stories that I wanted to add to that same world. And then finally, when it did join the Serenity universe officially, and I knew it needed 7 stories, I came up with the final 2 stories in that series. In 2023 or 2024, I can't remember which, I wrote the first draft of stories number 2 through 4 in the Sultry Solstices series. I knew the series would follow 7 sisters, and I decided what supernatural creatures would be part of that series, but I didn't have titles yet, so they were labeled SS2, SS3, and SS4. However, when I finished writing SS3, I made a discovery. SS1, 2, and 4 all were very sweet romances that ended with a single kiss, whereas SS3 had a very smutty scene in Chapter 2. I decided very quickly it wasn't going to work for this series, and I decided to remove it from the series and make it the first in its own series, which would later become series number 3 in the Serenity universe, Captivating Cryptids. It worked out because it was a cryptid rather than a regular supernatural as the main character, love interest, and I had many more cryptids that I could do stories for, some of which I have been wanting to do stories for many, many years now. Now the Serenity universe had begun to form, and I had 3 series. At the time, again, didn't have a title for the universe, just 3 different series that were going to be in the same world. After removing the initial SS3 story from the first series, from Sultry Solstices, I needed to replace it with another story idea. And so what I did is I scoured through all of the story ideas I already had that I hadn't started writing anything for to see if there was one that I could kind of steal and plop into place. And I found one. And it worked out because it was a gargoyle story I've been wanting to work on for a while now. And the story idea was just good enough that I could drop it into it, change the character's name from what I was initially thinking, and roll with it. And it worked out almost like it had been ordained. And from that moment on, I had 3 complete series in the same world, each with 7 stories apiece. It wouldn't be until much later, when Stephanie threw out an idea for the universe, that I decided to add more series to the same world. One of the things that I have decided to do while doing this sprint, I have actually been debating it for a while, but this just confirms I need to do that. What I've decided to do is that I'm going to write the next story before I write the epilogue for the previous one. So I need to wrap up the third story before I can write the epilogue for story 2. I have written an epilogue already, but it no longer matches the story that I've started writing for book 3. So moving forward, I need to write the next story before I write the epilogue of the previous one. I do have story ideas for all 7 of the sisters. I know the partners. I've talked about it a little bit in the fact that I know where the story is going. And I do, roughly. The first one is done, complete. The second one is done except for the epilogue, I believe. I do want to read back through it, maybe make some changes to it based on what I do with the rest of the story in the third one, but we'll see. And I do need to read back through the first one before I do that read through of the second one, because Josephina does appear, and I want to make sure her personality matches between the 2 stories. There can be slight differences, because it could be that what we see of her in the second one is how she's portraying herself in front of her sister and her sister's beau versus how she is around her own beau. But I do want to make sure that her personality matches, or at least we get some kind of explanation about why it doesn't, if it doesn't. So we've got a ghost, a vampire, a gargoyle, a hellhound, a orc, a fae, and a djinn. Those are our seven supernatural creatures that are going to be love interests to these 7 sisters. And I have rough plot ideas for all of them. So these ones are actually planned out to a certain extent. I have been struggling with story number 3. And I think the reason I've been struggling is that I've just got too many story ideas and I didn't know which one would work for here. And I've been talking about this off and on for the past couple of vlogs that I've done, where I've started writing, I changed my ideas, and I started writing again. And so this is the 3rd time I've written this. And this actually goes back to the original story idea that I never did end up writing. The original story idea was that this woman was helping repair a roof that had a gargoyle on top, and the gargoyle comes to life. So I'm returning back to that story idea. It was literally a modern ripoff of Gargoyles, the 90s animated show. And basically my thought process was that I wanted to see Eliza and Goliath get together. I was upset that they never did. Like, my little monster lover heart is so sad. Anyways, so it was like a homage to that. And in my head when I started writing it, I don't know why that idea ran away. It just did. And so it kept changing, like, why she was going to be on a roof, what she was even doing, and I took her off the roof, and I put her in a different city, I put her in a different country, I put her in a different situation, and, like, I kept changing it. And I'm not mad about that, but it's just, I need to go back to that original idea. She's on a roof, she's helping to repair, she touches the gargoyle, it comes to life, kind of thing. I am still going to change that a little bit. I'm not going to put her on a roof, but, like, she's going to be at this location where there are a bunch of gargoyles, and they're just randomly, like, she's helping making repairs to this home for renovations, and comes across a gargoyle. So, like, I am going to keep some elements of the same thing. It's just not going to be quite the same. And I'm not going to put it in another country. However, I still do like that idea where I had her in another country. I had her doing, like, art inquisitions is not the right word. Acquisitions, something like art related, where she was either studying art or she was starting artifacts or stuff like that. I do like that idea. However, I want to keep that for a completely different story idea, and that's going to be more like a man cursed and set in stone. Think, for anyone who's seen the Chronicles of Narnia, where Liam Neeson played Aslan's voice. Think that story whenever we see the stone garden for the Ice Queen. Ice Queen? Winter Queen? I don't remember what her name. Her stone garden where she turned everyone to stone. Because the second story ideas, the second draft of that story was basically that idea. This artist who was elusive had her artwork had only been seen in a couple museums, and she was exonerated because it was so lifelike. And then she suddenly invites this woman to come visit her artwork and see it in person. She's been very private about it, and she has never let anyone see her entire collection. And our main character wins this competition and gets a chance to view all of her artwork. I still love that story idea. It's just it's too long of a story idea for a short story. Maybe a novella, but too long of an idea for a short story. So that's why that one wouldn't work. Plus, the way I was describing the gargoyle on that is that it wasn't even a gargoyle. It's like the stone garden from Chronicles of Narnia, where it was just people with stone casings, basically. Which is not my idea of gargoyle, and it wasn't where I wanted the story to go. So that's why that idea is being scrapped. But it's going to return as a completely different story that may or may not come out in the future. I may still write that one and finish writing that one and have it come out. So we've got all 7 stories plotted as far as like what ideas I want for this, because now that I've returned back to the original idea with the gargoyle story, where she touches this gargoyle and it comes to life. I'm not even going to say that he was cursed. I'm going to say that he was just in hibernation because he didn't have a reason. Sorry, my mic died and I had to go get the other one. Anyways, so I have plot ideas for all 7 stories, basically, is what it comes down to now. So the first one is done. Second one is drafted. When I finish 3, I'll finish that one. And then so on and so forth. 3, I have an idea of where it's going. 4, the first draft is done. I do need to rewrite it. It'll be okay. 5 is the only other one I'm going to possibly have problems with. I have a couple ideas I can play with. We'll see what ends up happening. 6, I have the idea. It's going to be like Carrie meets Cinderella. It's very weird in concept. It's going to be like this revenge story that turns into Cinderella retelling, basically. And then the last one is like the genie in the lamp, except the person receiving the wishes refuses to use said wishes, kind of thing. So I've got ideas. It's not a matter of like not being able to write, because I actually think I can write all these except for if I can get through 3 and 5, I'm set with the rest of the series. So let's go ahead and see how much more writing I can do before the sprint is done, because I'm pretty certain the sprint's almost done because I've been filming for a while. I honestly didn't get very far in those first couple of sprints that I did, and it was extremely frustrating. The first sprint I spent reading through all of the project notes that I had so far for all of the series as a whole. I just wanted to see exactly what I had done for each story so far. And then that second sprint I spent filming clips and having to replace technology as things were dying. So it was very frustrating, and I ended up having to take a break, eat some food, and change my clothes and my situation as far as like how I was sitting on the couch. That was another factor. I think I had a problem with just trying to do this writing challenge while sitting on the couch, because the couch is just way too comfy. I think another issue I had was the fact that I was using timers on the Forest app, which usually I don't have a problem with, but when I'm doing a challenge like this, I tend not to get into the groove until I'm a little bit in, and I kept finding that almost as soon as I was getting into the groove of whatever task I was doing at the time, my timer would go off. So that was frustrating as well. And what I ended up doing is after I took my break, I switched to using a stopwatch feature on the Forest app versus the timer feature, which helped tremendously because it meant that I could just set it and forget it and continue going until I purposely stopped and had to take a break, which helped a lot in the end and is actually when I started buckling down and getting some work in. The 4th, 5th, and 6th series in the Serenity universe were originally their own separate series that were not supposed to be interconnected with each other at all. They were completely different ideas that were not in the same world. And after I decided to create 7 series in the Serenity universe, thanks to a comment from Stephanie, who gave me the name for the Serenity universe, I decided to take those story ideas and put them in the same world. The 4th series, which is Circus Companions, was originally supposed to be a trilogy about people who were cursed to turn into animals and shoved into a circus to perform for people after restrictions denied the access of animals in the circus. After the Serenity universe became a thing, I decided to take those 3 stories and add on to them. I decided the 4 other animals that would be in the circus, and I didn't at the time start plotting out ideas, but I did have a general idea that some of them might have been forced to work for the circus while others volunteered to work for the circus. But they are all shifters, and they are all different animals that perform in circuses. The 5th series came around much the same way. It was originally a series that I had planned on writing as short erotica stories. They may still fall in the erotica category, or at least they might have spicy scenes. They won't be erotica itself, but they may end up having spicy scenes. And what I wanted to do was I wanted to tell the story of Merlin and Morgan Le Fay and how they hid dragons in human forms in order to protect them, back when Uther Pendragon wanted them destroyed because they were supposedly destroying his castle and preventing him from being able to build it. And so Merlin and Morgan Le Fay worked together in order to hide dragons. And then it was about dragons in modern times as they realized that they were in fact different elemental dragons. That was the idea. And I had 4 or 5 different stories planned as far as like what elemental dragon would be featured in each story, but then I just added a couple more stories to flesh out the rest of the 7 ideas that I had for the series, for the world, and again I just added it to the universe. Series 6 was very much like 4 and 5 in the fact that it was originally its own series, not part of any world. There was originally 4 books in the series, and I was taking the idea of a fairy tale retelling featuring the Polar Bear King, and each of the stories was going to follow one of the children of the Polar Bear King. When I added it to the universe, I decided to continue on with that idea and give the royal family more siblings, whether it's going to be children or cousins or grandchildren. I haven't decided yet. The initial series was about the sons of the Polar Bear King, and I think with continuing on with the series, it's going to feature prince and princesses that are all related to the Polar Bear King in some form or fashion. I haven't decided which, or at least I hadn't when I was doing this 10K day. Because again, one of the reasons I'm doing the 10K day, or one of the things I'm doing during this 10K day, is brainstorming different ideas to flesh out the various stories in each of these series in this world. Before doing this 10K day, the final series in the Serenity universe was the one that I had the least ideas for. I had titles, and I knew it was going to be about a coven of witches. And the only reason I knew it was going to be about a coven of witches is because a coven of witches is mentioned in the second story in Sultry Solstices, because the main character herself is a self-taught witch, and there is a coven of witches mentioned asking her if she trained with them before she reveals that she's a self-taught witch. And when I came up with the idea of writing more series in the same world, I decided I wanted to include a series that featured witches in this particular coven. So the final series in the Serenity universe is Wooing Witches, but that was literally all I knew about it. I had some basic ideas for titles, but I hadn't fully settled on any of these yet. Since then, I have settled on titles, but again, I have absolutely no plots. I know the title, and I have an idea as far as like they are each going to follow different witches within this coven. That's it. That's all I had. You're going to make him wag his tail. Huh? You're going to make him wag his tail. And it's all over once he starts wagging his tail. Told you. Look at him, like a distinguished gentleman.
Stay right there.
He's like, but Dad, you called me. Too late. As he slinks off the couch. He's like, you can't stop me, Dad.
If you're lucky, you're an adorable grouper. That's what it is. Hold on, I'm working on it.
Ogre, did you steal his spot the moment he stood up?
He literally stole my spot as soon as I got up.
To be fair, Jester stole my spot because I was sitting there. And I've been sitting there most of the day, and she was sitting where the pillow is before you picked it up off the floor. After she knocked it to the floor. She knocked it to the floor twice today. Because I picked it up, and then you picked it up.
There you guys go.
And then Ogre was actually laying where he is now most of today. Because they've been hanging out with me here in the living room while I've been writing. Or attempting to write. I'm not quite certain what's going on here, but he looks like he's trying to apologize for her. And she looks like she's deeply offended by something he did. Alright, it's been a week since I did the 10K, or I attempted the 10K, so I figured it's time to do a final wrap-up and finish up this vlog so I can get it out to you guys. I am live streaming, so if you hear any noise in the background, probably my computer. We're in the middle of a sprint. For the 10K day, my goal was to brainstorm different ideas across the entire Serenity universe. I did end up doing that. I don't know exactly how many sprints I did because at one point I decided to switch over to using the stopwatch feature on the Force app, which went so much better than the first couple of sprints I went. And then later in the evening I joined JC on the Force app and we did a couple of 30-minute sprints together and I did okay with those. I did not reach 10,000 words, but I did get really close, and I'm happy with the progress I made, so I cannot complain too much, especially considering how I did the first few sprints of the morning. What it all came down to, basically, was that I was frustrated with a couple different things during the morning sprints, and so, like, those didn't go so well. And then I took a break, I hung out with the family, I did stuff with them, and then later in the evening, JC was like, hey, do you want to do some sprints? Because I know you're doing a 10K day. And I was like, yeah, let's do it. And so we did some sprints together, and those went significantly better. And I got a lot more work done. So, I was working on the Serenity series. I was not caring about what exactly I worked on. I was alternating between drafting and brainstorming, and I ended up working on 5 different projects. Again, I use the term projects lightly because of the fact that I was trying to brainstorm ideas for the entire series, for the individual books across the entire series, but the way I was working it was that I was just doing collectively as far as my word count tracker goes. So, the projects I worked on were Protected Alone, which is the 3rd story in the Sultry Solstices series, the first one in the Serenity universe. I worked on Monstrous Mates, which is the 2nd series in the Serenity universe. Captivating Cryptids, which is the 3rd series in the Serenity universe. Dashing Dragons, which is the fifth series in the Serenity universe, and Romantic Royals, which is the sixth series in the Serenity universe. I did not work on series number 4, and I did not work on series number 7 this time. In Protected Alone, the third story, I wrote 6,275 words. In Monstrous Mates, across all 7, I did 644 words. Captivating Cryptids, the third series, across the whole 7 stories, I did 373 words. Dashing Dragons, whole series, I did 463 words. And then Romantic Royals, I did 277 words. Most of those were brainstorming. I say most of those. Actually, most of those were me actively writing a story. I finally hit a groove with Protected Alone, and I rolled with it, and I just went. And in between, when I felt like I was getting stuck, or I was like, I don't want to like burn myself out of this particular story, I would switch to one of the other series and kind of brainstorm a little bit. So I definitely wasn't trying to force anything as far as like my writing goes. The only thing I was forcing was that I was staying strictly to this universe. I had to stay within the 7 series, which I did really well on. I wrote 8,032 words. I am really pleased with that, especially with how poor the morning was going. And then after I took the break and I started writing at night, it just went significantly better, and I'm so happy with that. Anyway, that's how I did for this 10K day. I do want to attempt it in the future, but I'm pretty happy with the fact that I got 8,000 words, over 8,000 words this time. If you made it this far in the video, leave me some kind of clock emoji for the timer and the fact that I hated using it this entire time. Anyways, that's all I have for you guys today. I will see you all in my next video. Bye, Dragonlings.